Hey everyone, welcome back. Today on The Explainer, we are unpacking something absolutely fundamental to human progress. We're looking at what you might call the architectures of academic inquiry. Think about the last time you tried to figure out why a bizarre meme suddenly took over your social feed, or maybe why a specific morning routine actually makes you more productive. You were likely searching for the truth. Well, whenever researchers systematically uncover the truth on a massive scale, they aren't just guessing. They're using a very specific, carefully honed investigative toolkit to figure out the actual mechanics of our world.
And that brings up a massive, kind of mind-bending question, doesn't it? How do we actually know what we know? When you read a headline that says a certain economic policy works, or a specific teaching method is definitively better for kids, where's that certainty even come from? Academic inquiry isn't about throwing darts in the dark and hoping you hit the bullseye. It's about following highly structured, rigorous pathways to arrive at the undeniable truth.
Okay, let's map out our route for today. We're going to start with the quest for knowledge, move into precision, numbers, and control, then explore context, culture, and observation, followed by unlocking the past, and finally wrap up with the complete research toolkit.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the quest for knowledge, the backbone of inquiry. Every great investigation requires a starting point, right? But more importantly, it requires choosing the exact right tool based on the specific nature of the mystery you're trying to solve. You wouldn't try to fix a car engine with a paintbrush. Methods of research form the literal backbone of academic inquiry. Each one offers a totally distinct pathway to knowledge based on the problem, the data, and the intended outcome. And I really want to emphasize here, these methods aren't just dry academic jargon. They're the active, driving force of absolutely all discovery across disciplines. Whether you're testing a breakthrough medicine or analyzing massive societal shifts, your method dictates your destination.
Moving to Section 2. Precision, numbers, and control. Experimental and quantitative methods.
Let's shift gears into the strictly controlled, hard number side of our investigative toolkit, starting with the experimental method. This involves actively manipulating variables under tightly controlled conditions to establish definitive cause and effect relationships. Basically, if you purposely change variable A, does result B happen? The true power of this tool lies in its strict nature. It's highly structured, completely replicable, and incredibly precise. You're creating a sterile environment where only one thing changes, so you know exactly what caused the outcome.
To see how this works in practice, let's walk through an example. Step 1, you establish a baseline control group. Step 2, you introduce a brand new teaching method to your experimental group. And Step 3, you compare the student performance between the two. By perfectly isolating that single variable, the new teaching method, you can definitively prove if it caused the change in performance. There's no guesswork, no assumptions, it is just pure, proven cause and effect.
Now, closely related to that is the quantitative method. This relies heavily on numerical data and statistical analysis, using structured instruments to generate measurable outcomes. While the experimental method focuses on the meticulous setup to find a cause, the quantitative method focuses heavily on the resulting numbers themselves. It prioritizes mathematical precision, broad generalizability, and using those numbers to accurately predict future trends. When a researcher uses the quantitative method, they're taking really complex human behaviors or outcomes and evaluating them mathematically. So, by analyzing varying exam scores across different groups, like comparing that control group to the experimental group we just talked about, they can measure teaching effectiveness with hard, undeniable data. It gives us an objective, bird's-eye view of trends, completely stripped of any individual bias.
On to Section 3. Context, culture, and observation. Descriptive and qualitative methods.
But hey, numbers don't always tell the whole story, do they? So we're gracefully transitioning from the tightly controlled to the human-centric, observational side of our toolkit. Here we meet the descriptive method. This focuses purely on portraying existing phenomena without any manipulation whatsoever. Think of it kind of like a wildlife documentary. You aren't changing variables or poking the subjects. You are just watching and recording. This tool values crystal clarity and incredibly rich detail over trying to find a direct cause and effect. It's all about capturing the reality of what exists right now.
It's fascinating to see the stark contrast between these two approaches. On one hand, the experimental method uses highly controlled manipulation to establish causality. It is very hands-on. But on the other hand, the descriptive method relies on pure observation and documentation to capture reality as it naturally exists, totally hands-off. Two completely different ways to view the world, depending entirely on what you actually need to know about your subject.
So what does the descriptive method look like out in the wild? Well, it takes the form of broad surveys, deep case studies, and observational studies. For example, if you want to know if consumers naturally prefer neon pink packaging or eco-friendly cardboard, you don't lock them in a sterile lab and force them to choose. You go out into the actual store aisles and observe their habits. You document reality to see what people actually do in their day-to-day lives.
Next up, in this observational family is the qualitative method. This emphasizes meanings, experiences, and social dynamics. It highly values depth, context, and interpretation. You see, if quantitative research asks, how many? Qualitative research asks, how does it feel? And what does it actually mean? Sometimes a simple 5-star rating doesn't tell you why someone loved a movie, right? Qualitative research digs right into the messy, subjective human experience rather than just relying on cold statistics.
To gather these deep qualitative insights, researchers use specific, highly conversational vehicles, things like interviews, focus groups, and textual analysis. Imagine trying to understand exactly how employees perceive an organization's internal culture. A simple 1 to 5 scale survey on a Tuesday morning just isn't going to cut it. You need to sit down, conduct focus groups, and really listen to their unique stories and interpretations to get to the nuanced truth of their work lives.
Which brings us to Section 4, Unlocking the Past, the historical method.
Let's see how all this builds into our final specific methodology, which honestly acts as the ultimate academic time machine. The historical method investigates past events, records, and documents to understand developments and trace patterns over time. It is the definitive tool for reconstructing the past to explain our present-day contexts. Because the truth is, you can't truly understand where a society is right now or predict where it's going without meticulously researching exactly how it got there in the first place.
Think about a highly complex modern issue, like current industrial policies or international trade agreements. Following their evolution over a timeline, say, starting a decade ago, researchers gather vast amounts of archival data. Then, maybe 5 years ago, that data was synthesized and its evolution analyzed. And today, in the present, that painstaking historical reconstruction gives us a profound understanding of why our current policies look the way they do and how past decisions snowballed into our modern reality.
And finally, Section 5, the Complete Research Toolkit, Choosing Your Weapon.
This is where we bring this entire explainer together to truly master academic inquiry. When you lay them all out side by side, you can see how every single approach is a calculated trade-off. The experimental method establishes amazing causality, sure, but a sterile lab may lack real-world context. Descriptive gives you incredibly rich detail, but absolutely no causal explanation. Historical connects the past to the present, but you are entirely limited by what data actually survived. Qualitative gives you breathtaking depth of insight, but it's subjective and hard to generalize. And finally, quantitative gives you precision and generalization, but might completely miss the human context or deeper meaning.
So the crucial point here is perfectly summarized by a quote directly from our source material. It says, "Experimental ensures causality. Descriptive captures reality. Historical connects past and present. Qualitative uncovers meaning. And quantitative ensures rigor." I love that. It beautifully unites the entire toolkit, showing that together, and literally only together, they provide a comprehensive, bulletproof system for advancing all human knowledge across every discipline imaginable.
Which brings us to a final question for you. Which tool will you use for your next big question? Whether you're analyzing data at work, trying to understand a complex historical event in the news, or just figuring out consumer trends for a passion project, you now understand the 5 architectures of inquiry. I challenge you to take these tools and actively apply them to your own lifelong learning journey. Keep observing, keep questioning, and keep learning.